Hi there, welcome to the Raven's Call. I'm Eric, Wordweaver Shervin, Gothi of the Ridgar folk, and this is a show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects, depending on what strikes my fancy. Before we get into today's topic, I want to get the housekeeping stuff out of the way. And so, if you guys like the videos, if you enjoy what I do, please hit like down below, hit subscribe, ding the bell if you want to stay up to date. All my other contact information is down there. I got to fix my Twitter handle, I've been told. I think I had it wrong there in the description, so by now it should be fixed. I'm going to see if I can't go back and alter those others to get them updated, so give me a little bit of time. Not that anybody actually needs to follow me on Twitter. I'm horrible at Twitter. So, anyway, this is another viewer request. It's something that I had been on the fence about doing from the beginning. A lot of people, we did the intro to the runes. Let's talk about runes a while back, and I kind of discussed my overall philosophy on the runes, how I see the runes, how I deal with divination and things like that. And this is the series where I'm going to break down just a really basic rundown on the runes, okay? This is not going to be super in-depth. Anybody that's done any significant rune work is going to look at this and go, I don't need to watch this because it's all beginner stuff. Those that are starting out, these are just my insights, okay? Please read everything you can. Study from everybody you can. There's a number of different sources out there that you can go to. I would stay away from anything by Ralph Bloom or anything that includes the blank rune. Go back and watch my Let's Talk About Runes video to understand why I come from that point of view. There's no such thing as a blank rune, okay? For the more detailed, go back to the video and you'll get why I say that, okay? So, on the subject of source material, there's a lot of different books out there that you can look at. I highly recommend looking at everything you can, even if you think it may be wonky or crappy, it doesn't matter. Read it anyway, because you never know. It could give you the insight that you need to take a further step with the runes. Because here's the deal with the runes. It's a progressive thing. It's not something that you just go into, read a book, and all of a sudden you're a master on the runes. I am not a master on the runes. I am a student. I'm still a neophyte, as we all are, I think, through time. Odin was said to have hung on the tree for 9 nights before taking up the runes. He sacrificed himself to himself on Yggdrasil in order to learn the runes. I see the runes as the secrets of the world, insights into the natural order of things, into the ways of weird, and they're deep in their understanding, and they take time to learn. You will forever be learning new interpretations, new nuances, new interactions for the runes. Every time I do a casting for someone, or I do one for myself or my tribe, I learn new things about their interactions and the way they may play out. You will hear me throughout these videos go in and talk about the context for each of the runes. It's an important thing because the context changes everything when it comes to runes. What they're in relation to, as far as how close they are, what the sequence is, as far as how they come out, what the progression of the scenario is as you sit here and do your working. You're going to see that different elements will influence the meaning of the rune in that particular moment. One of the problems that I see newbies come up with a lot is that they will put an over-focus on preset meanings to the runes. Keep in mind, this is using the runes as a divination process is actually more of a recent thing. It's not something that we have a whole lot of evidence that our ancestors did. I mean, there is, like I said in my other video, there's evidence of, castings and things like that by some of the more esoteric-minded individuals. But we don't have any evidence that they carved lots of runes like we do now and cast them like that. That does not diminish their value as a divination tool, because divination, of course, is bringing out the inner insights of the individual. So go back, watch all of that again, and you'll get the rundown for how I see and why I see the runes. But because of that, I won't be I won't be giving you, this is exactly what this means. What I'll be giving you is, these are general meanings that I find associated with these runes. This is kind of how I see them in interactions. I may talk a little bit about some of their magical uses as to whether or not you see them on individual talismans. I do not go into a whole lot of detail on their magical uses in a sequence or a rune row, a rune equation, because each of those is a case-by-case basis and is specifically developed for the purpose in mind for that particular equation. So I'll give a couple of examples of how one might appear or what one might be used as, but keep in mind there's a million different ways that these can interact and be utilized in a magical working, or in divination, or in a talisman or something like that. As with anything, whenever you do a talisman or a magical working, it's about intent, it's about the psychic energies that you're putting into the symbol. The power comes from you, not from the lot itself, not from the runes itself. Ultimately speaking, they're a written alphabet for vocalization and visualization of vocalized phonemes. So a lot of your hardcore recons are going to look at it and go, it's an alphabet. Why do you have the alphabet tattooed on your arm? It's like going A, B, C, D, E. Yes, in and of a fact, it is indeed an alphabet. But in the same, I dare you to challenge me and say that words do not have magical powers. I've done enough storytelling in my day to know how to weave a spell with the spoken word. And these symbols simply associate therewith. So, as with anything else, it's complicated. One of my favorite words. It's complicated. So, this is going to be the first Aett of the Elder Futhark. I'm going to do this in 3 videos. I'm going to dedicate an Aett each. I'll write it down on the page. This is a different filming format. Once we get kicked off, the other intros will be much shorter than this. I just kind of wanted to lay the groundwork for what we're about to do. I'm going to take a top-down shot, well, kind of a 3/4 shot of pad and pen. I'm going to literally draw out the runes and then write some notes on the side. Forgive my handwriting, because balancing a camera and trying to do all of this in a limited workspace, kind of difficult. So I don't have a big, huge, awesome setup studio. I don't even have a small, cool, awesome setup studio. I'm in my office and working on my desk, or set up on my wall over here. So it's going to be a little dodgy, but hopefully the information will be valid for you. It's easier for me to do that than to sit here and like hold up place cards going, this is Fehu, this is, and I'll use a specific set of names for the runes. These are just the ones I'm comfortable with. I am familiar with a number of different names. I'm also familiar with a number of different variants on the rune staves and how they are written, drawn, etc., etc. This is the Elder Futhark. All right, this is not the younger Futhark, which was in common use during the Viking era. This predates that, and our information on it is somewhat limited. I highly recommend you go and read all of the rune poems. I think there's like 3 major rune poems. Go and read those for some insight. They're wonderful, some great information, but there's a lot of interpretation there as far as what the meanings are and how that associates. And you will find those vary and differ from some of the established meanings that we have come to accept. So it's important to go back and reevaluate. It's important to go back to the sources and say, well, there's an element here that's missing from modern interpretation, and so I may need to reevaluate how I see and view this rune. Take time, meditate on the runes, think on them deeply. I highly recommend taking one, not necessarily taking one of your lots with you, but maybe drawing it on a pad or something like that, carrying it around with you and thinking on it throughout the day, looking at the image and associating that image with the interpretations that you have. I also highly recommend you go through and get one of those write-in journals and just start a journal. Dedicate a page or 2 or 3 to each rune, and then go through these books and write down all of the interpretations that you find in these different books. Use your own insights. Think of different interpretations that you can give them, and what you come to understand of them, thinking on the themes, the elements, because I guarantee you're going to end up coming up with stuff that other people may have missed, and it's fine because it's not a hard set thing. This is between you and your rune lots as far as what each symbol fully means, because divination is all about in here. It's not about what anybody else thinks. So don't listen to the naysayers. Do you and study and interpret how you will. Now this is going to be a longer video because it's the first one. So again, this intro is already about 10 minutes long. So we are going to go ahead and jump over to the first Aett of the Elder Futhark Runes. I will write all of that down on the pad. You'll see it here momentarily. I don't think I mentioned, but this is Freyr's set, Frey, and each of the Aetts is associated with a god or goddess. Gods mostly. It's Frey, Heimdall, and Thurisaz as far as the Aetts go. Those are associations. Fehu for Freyr is because of the fecundity, the wealth, the well-being, and those associations with Frey in the lore. So anyway, I don't mention that in the notepad taking. I filmed those first and then this. So I wanted to throw that out there. I am aware of that. I'm also aware of other associations with gods that appear throughout the rune row. I'll throw some of those in here. That's not really the important part to me. The important part to me is the overall themes and generalities of the runes. Again, this is very introductory, very quick. I only spend a few on each, and I do an Aett per video. So these end up being 30 to 40 minute videos. This one's going to be closer to an hour by the time we're done with the introduction and actually kick off the first Aett. So here we go. Without any further ado, part 1 of the Elder Futhark Runes. I know you're going to have some comments, and I know you're not necessarily going to agree with me on everything, and that's fine. I warn you, I am not a pro. I am studying myself. I just have been studying for over a decade on them. And these are the interpretations that I feel comfortable with my workings. So this is just my insight. Do not take this as, you know, hard writ stuff, okay? Get out and do your own research, come to your own decisions. There's authors out there like Stephen Flowers, Edred Thorson is his pen name. I don't particularly care for Edred's stuff because he comes from a ceremonial magic background. And so he looks at things from a ceremonial which is very codified, very hard set, numerology, things like that I don't feel apply to the runes necessarily. Not that they can't, just that that's not the way I think. So I don't tend to use those things. Sacred numerology is something that's heavy in the ceremonial magic, hermetic type stuff, not something that flows with the organic style that I like to use with the runes. So anyway, make of that what you will. He has written a lot and studied a lot and whatnot. So, you know, look into his books. You decide how you feel about it and go from there, because it could be a wonderful source for you. You could be like me and be like, this guy's a little too much on the ceremonial side. Not that it's bad info, just that I don't particularly care for his style. So anyway, without any further ado, this is the first Aett of the Elder Futhark. Thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, folks, as promised, here we go. We're going to talk about the runes now. This is going to be a little bit of a different setup. As you can see, I kind of have my tablet set up here. Tablet as in my writing tablet. And the reason that I'm doing it this particular way is simply because it's going to be easier for me to be able to show you hands-on. You know, I tried a little top-down before with my rune set, and it was a bit dodgy on pulling it off. So you should have already gone through the intro at this point. So I'm just going to kind of break this down. We're going to do these videos in sets of Aetts, and that is the term A-E-T-T, Aett, which is each of the groupings of the... also could be pronounced Aett, because I've seen it with the A-E diphthong, which is the A sound as in cat, short A. But what we're going to do here is we're going to look at each of these Aetts in sequence, and I think I'll do a video on each. We'll see as this goes along. So this is going to be the one we're going to handle first, so disregard the rest of it, and we're just going to look here at this one. All right, it's the first Aett. So we're gonna flip a page here, and hopefully all of this will work. Forgive, this is the first time I've tried to do something in this, other than when I tried to do a bind rune for a buddy of mine the other day, and let me tell you that worked out okay, but it was really, really dodgy. We're gonna lose that page. All right, here we go. Now, we are going to start with the first of the Elder Futhark, and this is going to be Fehu. All right. Now, Fehu, keep in mind, as I said before, I may use different pronunciations than what you're accustomed to. There's a number of different ways to go about this. This is simply how I do it. And as I said in the introduction, remember, these are my interpretations. I've studied these for years. This is just kind of my interpretation, how I go about it. Keep in mind, the runes are very, very organic, and the meanings that we assign to them are based on our own individual interpretations, experiences, etc., etc., etc. So, while this is my interpretation, this is not the only interpretation, and you should take this into account, all right? I'm not going to use variants on the rune staves for the most part. I'm going to use the forms that I'm accustomed to working with them in, because that's just how I'm comfortable doing it. Again, I'm not a master, I'm a student on this, but this is something that's been requested numerous times, and I thought, well, let's go ahead and bust out with it, okay? So, Fehu, the first rune in the Elder Futhark first Aett. This is the same root, Fe is the same root as the English word Fi. Fehu means, it really means cattle, like the aurochs. The reason that this, and we'll come back to the aurochs and Uruz, but the cattle in general, as far as movable wealth, this is the rune that represents material gain. You know, this is going to be a bit of balance between the first rune of the Elder Futhark and the last rune of the Elder Futhark. So we'll come back to that when we get to Ulthala. But Fehu itself is movable wealth. Forgive my horrible handwriting, but it beats trying to come back in and put stuff on the bottom when I'm doing something like this, because it's not going to show up on all this white down here. It's kind of ridiculous. All right, so Fehu, Fi, movable wealth. When you're doing readings and you're dealing with, you know, the Elder Futhark, when Fehu comes up, I usually indicate this to mean some kind of financial involvement, some kind of material need or gain. It's not always like material gain, but it means an element of material wealth involvement, money involvement, physical goods involvements. It really depends on how it interacts and plays with the other runes in the reading as to its exact meaning. When I go through and do kind of a mock reading for you guys, you'll understand a little bit better about what I mean by those interactions and how they play off of one another. But Fehu itself almost always refers to that whole material movable wealth, and not the immaterial stuff that we get into later with Ulthala. This is going to be money, this is going to be cattle, this is going to be goods, business arrangements, things like that are going to be involved in this. So when you're going through and you're doing a reading and Fehu comes up, that's largely what it's pertaining to. It means there's an element of finance involved in there, and the stability or instability that may come along with that, depending on the other runes that come into play. So again, we'll look at interactions later, but Fehu is again the first of the Aett. It is formed simply by a main stave and then 2 upward forks. I have seen it with curvature. I've seen it with short staves up top. I've seen it with the staves a little bit further down, but it's single strike, 2 up strikes. That gives you Fehu. The second rune in the first Aett of the Elder Futhark is going to be that of Uruz. Okay. Now, this ending Z here that you'll find a lot in the runes can be pronounced either as a hard Z or as the hard rolling R at the end. You will see that I will do that sometimes, depending on the rune and the word, the name itself. But you will also notice that from a linguistic standpoint, the sounds that the runes make are incorporated into the name of the rune. Fehu represents that hard F sound, F. Uruz is the umlauted U, the oo sound. That is like move or book. Not book, but book. It's a u sound. So keep that in mind when writing with the Elder Futhark. And I'll do a little bit on writing with the Elder Futhark at some point if you guys are interested. But most of you are looking for my interpretation aspects as far as it pertains to doing readings and whatnot. So this one, Uruz, is the aurochs, which aurochs were an old form of oxen. They were a woolly oxen native to Northern Europe, and I don't think they're around anymore. I'm not 100% on that one, but as I think they've gone extinct. But the aurochs itself was like somewhat similar to the buffalo in America, as far as it's just massive size and strength. When I say it's not as massive as the buffalo in America, the animals in Northern Europe didn't typically get that large due to the climate and zone in which they were. But it was that strength, that strong oxen, a brute, a beast. And in Uruz, you see the interpretation of inner strength or physical strength. And the way that this plays out in a reading is that I often find this rune indicating that strength is needed, or strength will come from a situation, depending again on how it interacts with the other runes in the sequence. And more often than not, it is specifically about the person that you're doing the reading for. It's that inner strength, might and main, working together to create that sense of self, that sense of power that comes from within. And it is something that has developed over time, something that everyone has. And when you find that in a reading, it will, like I said, play off the other runes, but indicate either a need for growing strength or a desire for strength, or that strength will come from this, something akin to that. But again, it's much about inner strength. It's the strength of will, largely. So again, with that whole might and main thing, Uruz you will find engraved in a number of items, especially like worn items, that's intended to bring out the inner strength of an individual, especially the physical strength of the individual. The gist on it being that, you know, again, when we go back to my intro on the runes thing, the psychic energies that we imbue into the rune itself are what actually give it its power, not so much the symbol itself, but what you bring to mind when you see it. So, Uruz for inner strength, physical strength, okay? Again, that's that U sound with the F of Fehu. The first batch of the Elder Futhark, will bring this back, spells out Futhark, hence why it's called a Futhark. If you look at the Anglo-Saxon runes, they switch up the position of Ansuz and Os, and it gives it the Futhark sound. So we'll come. I'm not doing the Anglo-Saxon runes, but you kind of get the idea. All right, we will then move on. This is kind of rudimentary introductory aspects because, sorry about the sound there, because largely this is something that takes years to study. You're not going to get it all in one go. And a 30-minute video on the interpretive meanings of the runes as I've come to know them, it's not going to give you everything that you need, all right? So please go out, read everything you can, and come to understand these. The next rune in the sequence is Thurisaz, okay? Thurisaz makes the TH diphthong sound. It is a singular rune. It exists in the modern Icelandic thorn letter, and you will find some rune sets, especially on the mainland, actually call it the thorn rune. And you will see it looks like a vine, a stalk, kind of like a rose stalk or even an ivy vine, thorn vine with a thorn sticking off of it. Okay, this is the thorn. Okay, this is a defensive rune, but it's what I see as an offensively defensive rune. Okay, as the thorn protects the individual, it does so by causing damage to another. This is an aggressive rune. It's a rune of force and focused intent. Towards the protection of the individual involved. It can be physical, it can be emotional, psychological, whatever it is. It's more than just putting up a shield. It's taking the sword in defense. Now, it's not necessarily an aggravated assault, but it is in and of itself a defensive stance through offensive means. You know, the best defense is a good offense kind of thing. It's not a preemptive strike kind of deal, but it's if you get too close, you're going to get cut, you're going to bleed. So that is Thorn, or Thurisaz. Messing up my writing there. Defensive rune. This rune I see come up in readings fairly frequently, and it usually means that a person needs to be guarded or a person is guarded. You've got to remember, too, when you're doing these readings, that time is not necessarily set as you're going through them. What is and what will be, you kind of get a feeling for as you do the rune reading. You kind of trust your gut and find on it. Again, I do castings. I don't do set lays or spreads on the runes, which you would then associate a specific position with a specific like time frame or something like that. In the 3 rune spread, you would see what was, what is, and what will be. I don't do that. I cast them out, and as I'm doing that, I'll look at the shape, and it'll either be a progression, it'll be a growth, it'll be a concentric growth outward or spiral, or it could be any number of things, plus the rune layout could take on runes itself. So when I see Thurisaz, Thurisaz is either a need to defend or a person is defensive of themselves. Sometimes this is a force that needs to be overcome, like if you are too defensive on something, like you're holding everyone at bay, you won't let anyone get close. That can be an interpretation for this rune. Similarly, it could be you were going into dangerous areas and you need to be ready to defend yourself because what you're going up against will be dangerous, either physically, emotionally, or psychologically. Ultimately speaking, it means to be wary, be on your guard, or to overcome that guard because it's holding you back. It's preventing you from getting where you need to be, progressing through whatever the solution for the problem or answer for the question might be. So that can go either way. Magically speaking, you're going to see this rune used a lot on daggers, swords, things like that, where they're for defensive purposes, but again, with that sharpness, that sticking defensiveness of if you harm me, I will hurt you. If you come at me, you will walk away bleeding. That's the essence of the Thorn rune. You will also notice a root in here of Thurs, which is the giant. It's akin to Jolten, but ultimately speaking, it's actually more of a, and there's an R there, the Thurs tends to be more of a antagonistic, enemy-esque giant. And so this rune is frequently associated with Thor because of the TH aspect of things, plus the whole aggressive defender of Midgard and Asgard. So it's not officially one of the god runes. That one is that one's not officially tied to Thor, but I do frequently tie that one to Thor because of the associations with it. Okay, onwards, we're going to move on to the next rune, which is Ansuz or Ansuz. Again, like I said before, you will see me alternate on that ending Z as to whether or not it is a hard Z or kind of a rolled R. For this one, I go with Ansuz. It just seems to flow better for me. Ansuz is the A sound, but it's a longer A, like the umlaut today. It's A. Kind of like caught, or not. It's like caught as far as in I caught them. Oh. And so Ansuz, you will find that used frequently in the writing aspects for that phoneme of O. And this is a rune of communication. All right. This is the voice rune. This is the rune of Odin. Okay. I'm going to use the traditional, the anglicized Odin, but only because I really hate drawing that Icelandic DTH sound. So, Ansuz is Odin's rune. It is the rune of communication. It is the rune of exchange of ideas. You know, it's not just speech, it's sharing of ideas. It's everything that we do here. It is the voice rune, to give voice to something. And so in a reading, frequently that means that you are looking at an element of communication involved. That could be an absence of communication, a need for communication, that communication is the conduit through which something will occur. Regardless, communication is the key element here. The voice, the spoken word, the written word, typically the spoken word as far as the interaction between two individuals, because you've got within any communication, you've got person A, which has the message, and then you've got person B who needs to receive the message. So the message has to be put into a form, which is typically the spoken word or a voice, and that translates over here, where they then interpret that as they hear it here, and then give meaning to it in their mind. This whole process here is Ansuz. It is the communication. It is the codification of idea into a medium that can then be received and interpreted on the other side. So, again, Ansuz within a reading, depending on its relation to the other runes, could mean a need for that communication. It could be a breakdown in communication. It could be that communication is key to make this happen or to get through this particular process. Whatever it may be, highly recommend studying communication, at least some introductory stuff on it, to better understand the nature of the Ansuz rune. So, that's Odin's rune. Odin, of course, being the one that gave us the runes, the method of being able to communicate sounds into symbols, and therefore written communication across. He's also a god of poetry, wisdom. So, communication's right up Odin's alley in that respect. So, that's Ansuz. You're going to see that one usually as far as magical inscriptions go in things to help facilitate that communication, to help facilitate interaction between individuals or tribes. You know, it's like sometimes I'll mark it on something that I'm going to give as a gift to another tribe or individual in order to broker better communication and interaction between our two entities, our two tribes. So that is Ansuz. Okay? Onwards. Next up, we have, make sure I'm still in a frame here, Raidho. Okay? Now, Raidho I see either as kind of an R form like that. More often than not, I see it kind of tall with a short staff there. You'll see it in varying forms, but ultimately it forms kind of an angular R. And it does indeed give the R sound. Okay? And this is Raidho. Now, in the middle here, you'll hear it pronounced Raidho, like a DTH, kind of a Raidho, or Raidho with a hard DH sound. There's varying interpretations depending on root, who's talking, who's reading, etc., etc., etc. The important part here, though, is the R aspect of that sound. This Raidho is the wheel. It is the concentric wheel, the wagon wheel. It is an active rune. It is transitions. It is motion. It is travel. All things that involve going from point A to point B. Be that a transition of one state of being into another state of being, thus the transition, the journey. It could be moving from location A to location B, thus a journey or a traveling. It could be transition between ideas, a shifting in zeitgeist, any number of things. Raidho, while it ultimately means that motion, that travel element, it's the rolling of the wheel. It is progression from one into the next. It is a transition. It is a shifting from one to the other. Movement. It is, again, an active rune. It is the rune of both physical movement, emotional movement, mental movement, all of that rolled into this singular rune stave. And so when it comes up into a reading, usually what I see is that's an indication that things are in motion in whatever's going on. You know, if you've got a transition from one state into another, or a shifting from this scenario to this scenario, or it could simply mean that a person's got a trip or a move coming up. I do not find that the runes typically hone in on minor mundane elements within a reading. Usually it's tied to big stuff, pertinent to the actual question at hand. So if this comes up in it and it does end up meaning like a trip or something, that trip is going to be of significance. There's going to be a reason that that's come up in the reading. More often than not, I find it to mean transition, transitionary energy, movement, the progression from potential into active energy, into kinetic energy. And so that's where I see Raidho going there, the rolling of the wheel, the continued motion. And it's fluid, it's constant. It's not something that's a stepping or a hopping or a jumping, stutter start kind of thing. It is a rolling wheel. It's a rolling stone. It is motion in constant forward progression. Okay, so that is that's Raidho. So we're through the R sound in Futhark so far. Next up, we have what I refer to as Kenaz, which I know also has other names such as Kaln, depending on which Futhark you are using. I use Kenaz. It's just what works for me. Kenaz is it's the torch. It's the fire. It means knowledge. It means inspiration. Kenaz is the mind fire. This is that spark in the brain that kicks on and lights you on fire and drives you to learn more. It's the spark of inspiration. I tie this to the Aettir, which, I gotta draw this stupid thing anyway. It's that DTH diphthong from Iceland. Aettir creates the DTH sound. Okay. Now, Aettir, if you've not watched my rune video, Aettir is that bit of the sacred, that divine madness that is gifted to us by the gods. Now, I would apologize for my writing, saying that it's, the video or something. I just can't write. I'm horrible at that. So, divine madness, the touch of the sacred, that little spark within us that gives us creativity. It sets us apart from the other Aettir, the other spirits on Midgard. I've got a video on it. You can go back and watch it to get some more detail on how I view Aettir. Look into the spirit element of the soul complex. But this, I tie these two very closely. All right. Now, Kenaz is that light, that spark, the lantern, the lamp, that light of knowledge, that light of driving desire to learn, the inspiration, the creativity, the mind fire. That's what I see as the mind fire. Okay. It's a term that I use a lot. A lot of these videos that I do on here are little mind fires that get lit for me, and I just kind of roll with them and put them out on video for you guys so that you guys can either let it light your own mind fire or let it go by the wayside. When it comes up in readings and I see it in interactions, usually that indicates some kind of revelation, or it indicates a need to learn, tied to knowledge in some kind of way, shape, form, or fashion, a pull to wisdom. It's like, all right, this means that you have something to learn here, or this means that there is through this process you will learn something that you need to progress through this to meet the other side. It could be that you need to learn more before you overcome whatever this is. There's any number of things, and I'm sitting here moving my hands on the side. You guys can't even see because it's all honed in here on the paper, which is, I know, boring because there's no movement. But that's that spark, that fire, that mind fire element that lights us, that drives us. And so I will frequently see this carved on necklaces, earrings, I'll see it sewn into garments, things like that, to help to spark someone who's studying, an academic, someone who's seeking inspiration, who is creative. Artists love this, writers love this, musicians love it. It's that spark, that creativity, that lighting of the fire that is the core of a person's art. The academics love it because it's that lantern of knowledge that is lit by their studies, and that they keep alight through all of the hard work and dedication they put towards their studies. So that is Kenaz. All right. So I hate that tearing sound. All right, onwards to Gebo. All right, this is Gebo. You will see it given different names. I also hear it frequently referred to as Gifu. Okay, Gebo, Gifu, however you want to refer to it as. This is gift. It's also the G sound in gift whenever you see it. Now, it seems like a simple X. This is an interaction between two individuals. As Ansuz was the interaction of communication between two individuals, an exchange of ideas, of communication, the exchange that occurs within Gebo is a material item or some form of sacrifice. It is gift. Okay? Now, Gebo is something that has a wide range of meanings depending on the context that it's in, but it all comes back to this gift. And the core element to gift, sacrifice, whatever it is, that it is freely given. Okay? Now, Gebo, within the context of a reading, can mean that a person needs to sacrifice something to come to the other side. It could be that there's an exchange of gifts that is key to this element. Gifting helps to build frith. Okay? So the exchange of gifts develops frith. It helps to build on frith. And the interaction of individuals is largely done through gifting. Small gifts, large gifts, appropriate to the nature of the relationship between the individuals. Beware of overgifting. And sometimes that can be what this ties to, is that one is sacrificing too much. Maybe one needs to sacrifice more. Again, it's all contextual. It's difficult to sit down and do a list of the runes and say, this is what this means and this is what this means, because largely so much varies depending on what they're with and how they're interacting. The runes themselves have general associated meanings, but they're organic, they're shifting, they are the mysteries of the world around us, and as such, it's not always so black and white. It's not always so easily codified into a specific list. So, Gifu is the gift. It is sacrifice. So you'll see this one used within, when you want to increase the power of a gift, marking a gift with this Gebo to mark it as a gift, to give it that added psychological, psychic energy of gifting, that freely given, imparting luck from one to the other. You will also see it in use for, again, sacrifice within like ritual, things like that, marking something as a gift to the gods, to give it a Gifu or Gebo rune, to mark it as a gift. So you will also see it worked into bind runes fairly frequently, because of that whole sacrificial element of things. All right, so that's Gifu, the gift, the exchange. Again, this is an active rune. Okay, this is not a passive type rune. This is active. This is a driving force. This is the kinetic force of exchange. It is not something that simply just exists. It is something that has to be done. It's an action. So that is Gebo. Okay. Now, onwards to the last one of the first Aett, and this is Wunjo. Okay? Now, here's the deal with Wunjo. Depending on how you do the accent, depending on which sources you look at, this can either be the straight up W sound of like wind, so Wunjo, wa, or it can be kind of a hard W, the V-ish sound, that would give like ve or very, etc., etc. I tend to lean to this side of things. Linguistically, I see arguments for both sides. More I look, it's probably closer to this side, but the accent's not pure. We also don't know what their accent as far as at the spoken time of Elder Futhark was. Most of like the Old Norse aspects that we have, like Old Norse, Proto-Old Norse, that were tied to like the younger Futhark during the Viking Age, things like that, are actually later than all of this. This is an earlier root for which the actual spoken language, as far as I'm aware, doesn't currently still exist. If you want some good information on the history of the runes and the linguistic progression of the runes, check out Jackson Crawford's stuff. He does some excellent work. I'll write his name down over here for you so you can search him out. He's an excellent source on all of this stuff. Just wonderful. So I'm not going to go through and try and do that element of the runes. I'm looking more into the esoteric magical elements. So aside from the sound, Wunjo is the weather vane. Okay? And the weather vane blows in the wind, you know. It looks like a weather vane, a flag, or you'll see them on top of barns, things like that. The idea is to indicate which direction the wind is blowing, right? And this is, by its interaction with the wind, with nature, this is a rune of balance and joy. Okay? It is joy through balance, specifically. When things all kind of even out, when they settle out, when all of the elements kind of line up together like a weather vane in the wind, there is happiness there, there's joy, there's contentment, and this is the root of Wunjo as I see it. I see this one in readings typically meaning either progressing from a point of balanced joy through some disruption onto the other side, or it could be that we are heading towards that balanced joy, that happiness, that sense of calmness and self that is what we all seek. You know, this rune I see as a goal, that seeking that balanced harmony, and I suppose that's a good word for Wunjo as I see it. Is even more than balance, it's harmony. When things are harmonically working together, you end up with a joyful or happy outcoming. So that is Wunjo. You will see Wunjo marked on things that are going to be like luck charms to bring people happiness, to bring them joy, to bring them balance in their lives. You'll see it worked into bind runes to give that element of joy, happiness, balance to whatever bind rune that you're working on. Clothing items can be worked into. More often than not, I see it in jewelry more than anything. Sometimes trinkets that can be carried around in the pocket, stuff like that. So that is Wunjo. And again, its specific meaning is related to the other runes that are around it, the context. Whereas Gifu, Gebo, some of these other runes like Thurisaz are more active runes. Raidho is very much an active rune. Wunjo is more of a passive rune. It doesn't really require... The status of Wunjo is not about action on the person's part. It is balance in the way things are. It just simply is a state of being. You either have that or you don't. You're either working towards that or you're building from it. You're passing through it, whatever it may be. This is more of a state than it is an action, such as Gifu or Raidho. So this could be something that's on the other end of Raidho. If you're coming from a hardship or something, through a process like Raidho, through a process towards Wunjo on the other side, you're progressing towards Wunjo. You're progressing towards balance. Or it could warn that an action deviates from Wunjo to a less desirable state on the other side. Okay? And again, it's not going to be a one-for-one kind of thing in this position. There may be like 3 or 4 runes around it that all give context to the specific meaning. I can get fairly spot on with my readings as far as this go by interactions with the individual that I'm reading, by looking at the full context of the story and everything that goes into it, and looking specifically at the context of the other runes around it, stuff like that. So runes for me are very, very much about context. They're very much about insight, trusting one's gut. So this is the first Aett of the Elder Futhark. Fehu, Uruz, Thurisaz, Ansuz, Raidho, Kenaz, Gebo, Wunjo. All right, so we're going to check that one off. We are done there. We're going to come back and pick up on the second Aett in the next video. And this came out a little bit longer than I anticipated, and it's with short interpretations. Keep in mind, I could go on for a long
Aaron to the therapy
pause.
office, please. Aaron to the therapy office.
Unpause in 3, 2, 1. Now, this came out a little bit longer than I anticipated. It's a longer video, but that's with short interpretations on these runes. I could talk about each of these in depth with some context and talking with individuals about different interpretations in different scenarios, things like that. So there's a lot that we can do there, but it's more conversational. Doesn't give itself as easily to video, and ultimately speaking, there's only so much that I can fit into a 30-ish minute video, and before cutting or editing, we're at 37 minutes just on what we've done with the tablet here. Okay, that doesn't count the intro. So this is going to be a little bit longer video, but hopefully you guys get a little something out of it. Feel free to give me any questions you got. Hit me up on Facebook or on the email, you guys know. So that's it for the first installment. We will be back next time with the second Aett of the Elder Futhark, and we'll go from there. So hail, guys. Thank you. May the gods bless you. May your ancestors smile on you.